Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros MLB. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and this is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It's so good to be back here with two of my best buds, the Welsh and the Joe Orrico. We're going to break down some undervalued pitchers for you today, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast feed. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're the biggest growing YouTube channel in the world for fantasy baseball. I don't know if that's statistically true, but it feels like it, so I'm just going to say it out loud because that's the kind of era we're living in, and each of us have assembled a list here of 3 pitchers that we find to be undervalued going into this season, some early NFBC ADP to go off, plus some rankings on FantasyPros.com that you can find right now, and we've even agreed on somebody. And there's one that we love, but we're debating about. So we're going to bring that to the conversation too. Before I bring in the guys for more conversation, I just want to remind everybody too, the MLB Draft Wizard tools are here and ready for you. MLB Draft Wizard gives you the edge, and you can sync your leagues in seconds, run realistic mock drafts using your exact settings. And our tools show you how you can take the next step in your draft process, okay? And if you're in a pinch, just ask the coach for real-time advice tailored to your draft. Plus, you can view players, projections, and build your own tiered cheat sheets, but you can't do it if you don't start. So go to fantasypros.com/MLB Draft Wizard and draft like a pro with Fantasy Pros. All right, gentlemen, it's great to see you. Off-season still slugging along a little bit. It's been a little weird one. Welsh and I have talked about it. Joe Orrico, I just had a really interesting conversation. I was just on the show with my good buddy Craig Mish, who covers the Marlins, we all know, MLB Insider. And we were having a conversation off air where he is very steadfast believing that next year we're going to get a salary cap. And what you're seeing right now is the beginnings of some of these teams realizing that that's probably going to be the inevitable change in the league. And that's why you're seeing teams like the Mets, who are very high on the salary bar, not necessarily adding a lot. And why you're seeing some other teams adding a little bit more, like the Pittsburgh Pirates, because there's going to be a floor as well. Do you think we're coming to that eventual end game in 2027?
I think we're trending towards a salary cap and a salary floor. I think we're seeing teams be a little bit more careful, like you mentioned. The Dodgers haven't gone out and given $600 million to Kyle Tucker, and maybe they would have if we weren't upon a potential work stoppage. They went out and got Diaz, and maybe they end up with Tucker, but it does feel like the higher-end teams are kind of taking it easy a little bit, and you're seeing the Marlins signing a closer in Pete Fairbanks, Pittsburgh in on every free agent. It could be some gaming to try and get over the floor if one does come in a couple of years. Yeah, I can see that.
And Welsh, speaking of Kyle Tucker, hasn't signed yet. I thought for sure the Blue Jays would be the landing spot. You got any predictions here? It is only the 6th of January, and he still has yet to sign. So let's take Orrico out because, of course, he's going to say Blue Jays. We know that. So, Welsh, where does Kyle Tucker land when all said and done?
Still think it sounds like it's going to be the Blue Jays. Okay. I don't even know if teams are being hesitant because of a looming salary cap, and that is literally the impetus of all of the potential work stoppage. It is going to be trying to get a salary cap, and the PA is not going to have it, and that's why this might get so nasty and dirty because of this. But I don't think teams are making moves necessarily in lieu of that, because if they do institute some type of a cap, like how are they going to hold against the Blue Jays what they do right now? And then they're going to force teams to cut 40% of their,
well,
I just don't, that's what I believe. So that's why I don't think it has
5 to 10 year window or whatever they agree on, but it's more that, you could sell it to the PA if there's a floor, because yeah, sure, all the superstars are making a ton of money, but what about the guys on the bottom, right? Like, all boats want to rise, right? You might have to chip away at the superstars a little bit and start to build up some of the guys in the lower tier. So it's going to be really interesting to see, and it's going to have an effect certainly at the trade deadline as well. Lots to talk about. This is what we do. We talk baseball here on the channel. So let's talk more baseball. Let's start with Joe Orrico here. Joe, give me a starting pitcher that you think is being undervalued currently in ADP early on in January, and why.
So of all the names we're going to talk about today, I think for all of our lists, this is the highest rated pitcher, the guy going off the board earliest, and it's Cole Ragans for me, a guy who did miss quite a bit of time last year, did struggle a little bit as well. The surface stats weren't amazing for him at all. A 4.67 ERA is nothing to write home about, but the strikeouts were better than we've ever seen them with Cole Ragans. 14.3 strikeouts per 9, the 38% strikeout rate. He had the best walk rate of his career as well at 7.8%. And even in a really bad year, a 1.18 whip is definitely something that you can live with. Of all pitchers who threw at least 60 innings last year, he had the best strikeout minus walk rate, he had the best Sierra, and he had the best expected FIP. His fastball velocity was still in that 95 range, 109 stuff plus, 107 pitching plus. It was an injury-plagued year, no question, but you're getting a little bit of a discount because of that. He's going between the SP 16 and 17, 18 type of range in early drafts. I'm planting my flag as Cole Ragans as an SP1, and he'll be a top 10 pitcher in my rankings this year.
And I love the fact that he's going as around the 20th pitcher, because me, I'm not an early pitching guy in drafts. So I like to double up on those aces. If I can get Ragans and somebody else in that top 20 range, I love building a rotation like that. Like you said, getting all the strikeouts, hopefully a little bit better health. And especially if you can pair him with somebody who is a little bit more set it and forget it, a guy that's been just kind of what he does every single year. And then you take Cole Ragans, who might be a little bit more inflammatory, but we know what the upside is. That's a good one. Speaking of upside, Welsh, give us your first on the list for undervalued pitchers early going.
Yeah, it's tough because there's so many like fun names. Ragans is definitely like the most fun because that's like a guy that could be a top 5, but he's already going really high. So now we'll move down the list. This is the highest ranked of my players, but this guy is going outside the top 100 in NFBC drafts. In fact, he's almost going around 150 right now. And that puts him, it's always tough in NFBC because it's like, he's like the 59th pitcher, but that's probably relative to like, the 40th or 35th overall starting pitcher. And it's Michael King. Michael King was a player I really loved going into last year. Struggled with some injuries this past season. He had a shoulder injury that took out a majority of the season and put up some relatively mediocre numbers. Now, the negatives on Michael King, like how much can you read into it? He had a 3.5 ERA because he finished the season, by the way, 3.44 ERA, which is solid in 15 starts, 1.2 WHIP, about the same, only 73 innings pitched. The negatives in his game were his expected ERA was over 4. He got barreled and hit hard more than he really had in his career. But prior to this injury, he was looking lights out. April and May, struck out 61 in 9 starts while giving up only 13 runs. So he ended up having, because then he got hurt, a 2.59 pre-All-Star break ERA. Then comes back. He's not the same. It's an over 6 ERA post All-Star break. And a lot of it was actually weighted to this one really bad start where he gave up 8 earned runs. But what I love about Michael King is I love the pitch mix. It's a high value, 5 different pitch mix. He's a shapes guy. Lance Brozdowski talked a ton about him this offseason as one of the great acquisitions because he's just one of those guys that, he can shape, he can cut the fastball, he can ride it, he can do all that great stuff. Great ballpark he's pitching in. He had a 2.5 essentially ERA at home this past season. And in that like good stint of April and May, 7 of 9 starts, he had 6 or more strikeouts in each of those starts. So I think he's wildly underrated because I love the shapes. I still love the stuff. His changeup was a little bit off this year. I think he can get back to that. He said he's fully healthy off of the shoulder injury. And when he's going like outside of like the top, let's say 35 overall SPs, I think he can get back to being a top 20 SP in San Diego. So I know he's kind of a like 30-year-old pitcher. We're kind of done with it, like a post hype sleeper type of thing. Like we're already done with it.
He's just hitting his stride. I mean, these guys right now, usually it's in their early 30s where they take off. Typically, like this.
Yeah, and that's where I'm getting it. But he was a guy that was like a reliever that transitioned to a starter. Was decent. Had the injury. He's back with the Padres. Didn't get a big deal. I think people hold that against him. Regardless of the point, I want to draft him. Run 150 in drafts, especially in NFBC. I think is a prime spot, and I think he's got a ton of upside. So I think he's undervalued this year.
I actually like the fact that the Padres re-signed him. It makes me feel better about his injury because usually when teams have a guy that's hurt and they know in-house exactly what's going on, they're like, you know what, we're going to let this guy kind of walk away. They didn't, which means that they must feel pretty good about his health going forward. Otherwise, they wouldn't have signed him to that extension. So the fact that he actually did re-sign with the Padres actually makes me feel a little bit safer about drafting him this year. And he was one of my favorite guys 2 years ago in the Black Book. I wrote him up. I do all the pitcher write-ups in the Fantasy Black Book, and I loved Michael King. Everybody knew this going in. He was my big breakout guy 2 years ago, and he did. Last year, disappointing. He had to pay a lot more to find out. And by the way, to pay to find out is what you want to do. Go get the Fantasy Black Book right now on Amazon. Welsh and Orrico wrote up all the infielders. You got Welsh's top 100 prospect list in there for Dynasty. You got all my pitcher write-ups. Kelly Kirby does the outfield. Again, it's on Amazon. Fantasy Baseball Black Book 2026. Shohei Ohtani on the cover too. Joe Orrico still loving that, right? You can't get enough of those Dodgers, right, Orrico? All right, let's get to one of my guys that I came away with from my write-ups this year in the Black Book that I just absolutely loved, and it's Nick Lodolo, a guy that I've been watching for years in the minor leagues, following the career very closely. And he's had some moments in the major leagues that have been very exciting, right? And then some that are less exciting. Obviously, 2024 was a bit of a disappointment there. The walk rate got way too high. But last year, 156 innings for him. He made 28 starts, 29 games he appeared in. The K per nine is still around 9, but that walk per nine went from 2.89 to 1.78. You love to see that. All of a sudden, when the walk rate goes down and you're, giving up less hits, it becomes much easier to control games and control innings. And that's what Nick Lodolo started to do for a Reds team that is really getting good quickly. They got a lot of talent on that team. They got a great manager who's been there and won many places in Terry Francona. So I love the Reds this year, and Lodolo is a big reason why. He's a really good return on investment. Right now, you're getting him as the 41st pitcher right now on FantasyPros, 132 in NFBC ADP. And if you look at the ERA, 3.33, xERA 3.47, the xFIP 3.66, everything is kind of in line here with him. So I think Lodolo is poised for a big year. He and Hunter Green at the top of that rotation, very encouraging stuff. So now, after a good, healthy season from him, we're looking for that innings total to get up a little higher into that 180 mark. And Nick Lodolo can be, I think, an incredible number 2. I think that's the upside in fantasy for him. Let's go back to Joe Orrico for another one of his picks here. And it's a guy in Drew Rasmussen. So let's talk about him, Joe.
Drew Rasmussen really has been Mr. Consistency throughout his entire time as a starter in the major leagues. You can't really count 2020 against him. He made 12 appearances in relief. From 2021 until 2025, every season his ERA has been below 2.84. His whip has never exceeded 1.08. Yeah, he doesn't run up the strikeout totals. He was at 21% last year, although we have seen some good numbers from him in the past, 26, 27%. Even if you're expecting a 21, 22, 23% strikeout rate, those ratios, if you're getting a 2.75, 2.85 ERA, going around pick 150 in drafts, there is so much value in that. Rasmussen also has the added benefit of going back to a more pitcher-friendly park at Tropicana Field this year. So I think wheels are up for him. He's an SP3, SP4 based on ADP. He could very easily function as an SP2.
All right, so Joe is in on Drew Rasmussen, and that ballpark shift back to Tampa where they used to play too. I'm fascinated to see how that's going to impact. I know Welsh and I were talking about Junior Caminero, and we're both big fans of his. Orrico, real quick, do you think it's going to have a negative impact on Caminero? Because the home road splits were pretty severe last year for him. I mean, he was great in that little ballpark. Obviously, not as good on the road. Do you think now he's going back to that pitcher-friendly environment, Caminero's numbers take a hit?
I think they do a little bit, yeah. On the road last year, Caminero was pretty bad. He had a 266 on-base percentage on the road last year. 100 WRC plus. He was a 743 OPS. He was pretty pedestrian on the road. But one thing I'll say, and I got to give a hat tip to Justin Mason for pointing this one out to me, is that over the course of the season, he did improve quite a bit as a hitter. And Tampa did play a lot of early games at home. They didn't want to be playing in the boiling hot summer there in Florida in August as much as they were in April and May. So there were a lot of there were a lot of road games down the stretch where Junior Caminero was still doing really good things for you. In September and October, he had a 168 WRC plus. In August, it was 154. So I think over the course of the season, he definitely did improve as a hitter. All that being said, though, I can't take him in the first round. I think if he's fallen to the middle of the second round, I can get more behind it. But paying for a 3-category guy without a track record in the first round, with a ballpark downgrade coming as well, I can't really get behind it in the first. Maybe in the second.
Well,
but not in the first.
Welsh could, and I'm kind of where Welsh is on this one. And he took him at the turn on our last mock draft show, which you can watch right here on their channel. See that? See what I did? See, I tied everything together. Welsh, the next guy we're going to talk about is another guy that you drafted. Another perfect segue here. I'm just crushing it today. I'm just saying, like, host-wise, like 5-star. But Welsh, I still am shocked, not only that you took this guy, but now you want to talk about him again, because I spend every day with you during the baseball season. Every single day, we're doing shows 5 days a week. And I don't know if there's one player that you hated on more than the guy you're going to talk about. So tell all the kids at home what's changed for you. Maybe it's the value, the return on investment. Maybe it's the potential landing spot. But talk to us about the next guy on your list.
Well, Joey, one of the things, sadly, is you have to leave us around August. And this is the big reason why I'm into Zac Gallen. I hated on Zac Gallen all year long because he was bad. He was atrocious. When you watch him every single day, it's a guy that was continuously going to his changeup, and he lives off of his changeup because he can throw it in any count. He'll throw it up in the zone, down in the zone. He'll throw it, first pitch, last pitch, but he just couldn't do anything with it last year. But the main thing to touch on here is and this is why it's probably a surprise, because you had to dial out, Zac Gallen, once the trade deadline hit, turned into vintage Zac Gallen. So in the first half, while I was complaining about him, 5.40 first half ERA, 3.9 second in the second half. 9 of his final 11 starts, he gave up 3 or less runs in each one of those. And by the way, 8 of those 9 starts were quality starts. And back to the changeup, that is where the majority of this stuff came from. I went and looked at a lot of like the actual pitch movement for that exact pitch. Movement was in the zone more. It wasn't moving as much. It was leading to more contact. And it's always been his biggest high value pitch. And he just really couldn't throw it last year. And in the second half is where he started to learn to come off of that a little bit. Now, I think a changeup not working at that level is something he can easily work on. But I'm taking that second half because Zac Gallen's an innings inner. Also, you want to go and look at some of the early projections. Bad X has got him for like 100 and
inner.
Innings eater.
No. You definitely
Eatings
said
inner.
Eatings inner, which is the first official Welshism. Let's ring the bell, everybody. That is.
Can we get a thing across the board?
Welshism alert! Welshism alert! Woo woo!
Eatings inner.
Oh,
yep, that's
gross.
what he is. Well, that's what he's officially.
You've had a lot of Welshisms. Look, we've been friends for over a decade. That's definitely top 5 gross ones. Like that's.
But that's just like my stupid brain, just like.
Oh, it was so good. You know what? And I was gonna let it go, and I said, "No, Joe."
No, I'm glad you didn't. But Bad X has got him like 192 innings, so he is going to go deep into games. He's getting those strikeouts back up. By the way, he cut his walks by a full walk per 9 in the second half when he found that big adjustment. Zac Gallen's not sexy. But guess what? Kind of my preparation for the undervalued pitchers, a lot of the high upside guys we can't put into this list. All the guys that everyone's talking about, we're like, ooh, Chase Burns, ooh, Travis Savage, Nolan McClain. Guess what? They're expensive. They're not undervalued at this point, and there's huge upside. I see some undervalued in some veteran players that I think can bounce back. Zac Gallen showed us in the second half that he has bounced back. He's going to get a deal soon. Hopefully it's going to be a place in a really beneficial ballpark. And I'm going to take that second half, 8 of 9 quality starts, 9 of 11, 3 or less earned runs. I'm going to take that with Zac Gallen and say going outside the top 200 where he is, there is a lot of value to be had at the middle to lower part of your fantasy rotation.
You know, I love Welsh's third pick too. I'm just teasing this a little bit. I thought I left him for Joe Orrico, and then Welsh picked it up and put him in there. So I don't know who got to the show sheet first.
Joe got to it before I was last.
Well, that's fascinating. So, all right. So teaser there. We're going to get to the rest of the guys' picks here. Before we do, number 2 for me is coming up. But before we get to that, I want to remind everybody too, the cheat sheet creator is available. And if you're trying to enhance your fantasy baseball draft strategies, then the cheat sheet creator is for you. Seamlessly integrate and merge rankings from multiple experts. You can take the Welsh rankings, hybrid them with mine, hybrid them with Joe Orrico, or just take these 2 yokels and eat all the innings you want, or inning all the eatings you want. Either way,
and all the eatings. Yeah.
Yes, all of those things. You can organize players into tiers, add personalized notes, so you can streamline your decision-making process, and you can also automatically update your cheat sheets with the latest expert consensus rankings to reflect all the changes, because God knows spring training brings injuries and changes. So head over to fantasypros.com/MLB Draft Wizard, or just download the Fantasy Pros app today. All right, next guy for me was pitching not good, but great. He was Cy Young worthy last year until some injuries derailed his season. He is currently the 43rd ranked pitcher on fantasypros.com, and he's 164 overall in NFBC, and his name is Nathan Eovaldi. Now, I understand Eovaldi is going to be 36 years old. I get that. But Nate Eovaldi last year was, as I want to reiterate, Cy Young worthy. That's how good he was. 130 innings. He had a K per 9, right around 9. The walk rate was under 2 there for walks per 9. He was brilliant. He had a 1.73 ERA, which look is not sustainable. But when you realize that the deeper issues here, when you go start to look into, well, it must have been way higher. It wasn't. The xERA was 3.07. You had a 2.80 FIP and a 3.03 xFIP. So that 1.73 ERA was not absurd. It was actually pretty much what he was doing, which was dominating. Now, he did have a shoulder issue. All the news so far is that the shoulder looks good. So this is one of these guys that you're going to have to wait and see in spring training, make sure things are going well. He also had off-season sports hernia surgery. That's also done and dusted. He seems fine from that. All the reports, I just read up again about it yesterday. just to make sure that everything was on track. And he seems like he is good to go for the season. Everything's going to be lined up. So sure, you worry about the age. Sure, you worry about the injury. Has he been a huge innings eater throughout his career or a guy who's dealt with injuries? He's been a guy who's dealt with some injuries. But the potential return on investment when we start to get this late in pitchers is massive. We're talking about a front of the rotation starter that you can get outside of the top 150 players, and that's just absurd value. So is it a risk? Of course it is. But Nate Eovaldi in these last couple of years in Texas has really shown you that he can be an outstanding fantasy starter. I wish I had more shares last year. I did not. And I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it just didn't. So over the 20-plus starts that he made, they were absolutely fantastic. I love Eovaldi's bounce-back potential here in 2026, especially on the discount you're going to get him. Joe Orrico, you've got one more in the chamber. Let's talk about your third pick here for undervalued starting pitcher.
Yeah, this one might be my favorite, actually. I've done a couple of early drafts, and I keep clicking on this name, and it's Cade Cavalli. And now Cade Cavalli, I think people have kind of given up. He's maybe the poster boy of the post-type sleepers because he was a top prospect, missed a couple of years, came back. On the surface, it was a 4.25 ERA. It was a 1.48 whip. Really nothing to write home about. But there are a lot of positives with Cade Cavalli as well. He has 4 pitches that he uses at least 13% of the time, and all have a stuff plus of at least 102. Very deep arsenal. He's now a couple years removed from his Tommy John surgery and the arm trouble in general. And even with the poor results, he did a great job of limiting hard contact against. There was a 4% barrel rate, 87.7 mile per hour average exit velocity, and a 41% hard hit rate. Gets a lot of ground balls, about 55%. And the strikeout rate will almost certainly improve. It was an 18% strikeout rate, but he's a 12% swinging strike rate, which indicates a 24 to 25% strikeout rate. And he gets a chase about 31% of the time, which is also a really strong number. So Cade Cavalli, dirt cheap, well after pick 300. His ADP as of this morning is about 332. Outside of the top 100 starting pitchers, nobody's really that interested in him. But for your last pick of the draft, or maybe even the first week of free agency after the draft, Cade Cavalli is potential diamond in the rough there for sure.
Yeah, I like the Cavalli pick. I think there's another good one too. There's some good names. I hope you're all taking notes out there, putting them in your cheat sheets. All right, so I teased it before, Welsh. Let's talk about a guy who is coming over from the KBO, and he signed with Joe Orrico's Toronto Blue Jays this offseason. He was about as dominant as you could possibly get in the KBO. I mean, he was unbelievable. Let's talk about Cody Ponce. Let's talk about the turnaround of a guy who was kind of a journeyman pitcher in the National League, and now all of a sudden finds himself back thrust into a World Series contender and a guy who put up just massive numbers last year. Let's talk about him.
Yeah, this is my third one. He's the lowest of any of the players we're going to talk about. NFBC, he's going outside the top 400 right now. He is an afterthought. So he's the last pick in any standard, home draft you're doing. He will probably rise as more people kind of end up jumping on it. It's like 164th among all pitchers on NFBC. But as you mentioned, he was over in the KBO where he won the MVP. He had a 17-1 record, a 1.89 ERA, 252 strikeouts. What I think is actually most interesting about that is the innings. He had 180 innings. So he's a guy that gets to come over and has no limitation. They can, as we would say, he's eating Zenner. He's going to be one of those guys for this Toronto team. Some interesting information as far as just like the pitch mix. Fastball, four-seam fastball, changeup, cutter. That's going to be like the big stuff. 46% whiff on the changeup. The fastball from when he was here, he's added 2 miles per hour back on the fastball. So he was around 93 when he was in the States. He's around 95.5 in the KBO. Now, something you have to monitor is some of the shapes of his pitches with a KBO ball coming back to the US are going to be a question. But his four seam, 27% whiff rate over there. The changeup is solid. The cutter is something that they might end up manipulating a little bit. It could be more like a gyro cutter. I know a lot of different people have talked about it. Plus, he's got a curveball and a sinker. The projections are fascinating on him. The Bat X just released, and then you can compare this against Steamer. Steamer's putting him around 155 innings, which I think is a little bit more appropriate, a 4 ERA. The Bat, only 129 innings, which I think is underselling, and a lot of projections just undersell that type of stuff. But one of the biggest differences between like Steamer and the Bat, 8.68 K per 9 for Steamer, 9.77 for the Bat. That's a huge K percentage. In fact, when you go and take a look among all overall K per, because that's a K per 9 I gave you, K percentage He is the 31st highest K percentage among all starting pitchers, according to the bat. So there's some major strikeout potential on a winning team where he is going to eat some of those innings, and he's going outside the top 400. This is a dude, again, MVP in the KBO. Maybe that's, AAA for a lot of people in your minds, but this is a guy that's got experience in the major leagues before. He's added velo on his fastball. He has that cutter, which is really going to be a good setup pitch to his four seam and his changeup. He's going to be able to go deep into games. That Toronto team is a World Series contender. I love everything about it, and he is free 99. So Cody Ponce is an absolutely undervalued pitcher to take at the end of all your drafts.
I have him in this section with Emmet as the wild cards this year in the Black Book. That's how I've ranked these guys, that there's just massive upside, right? And it's all about how they transition, in this case, transition back to the major leagues. So Joe Orrico.
And Emet's got a bunch of questions, just real quick. Emet just, size-wise, we're not talking about him here, but you're talking about like a 5'11", a $150 with cold water on pitcher, which that doesn't necessarily have to be anything. Sonny Gray has done it being a little bit smaller, but people don't know how he's going to translate over with his reverse slider he's throwing.
And every single one of those guys, Welsh, I feel like they all have different paths, and to try to say, well, they're all going to be like, I remember when Yamamoto and Imanaga came in the same year, I said, look, I think Yamamoto's going to take a little bit longer, but I think he's going to be by far the better pitcher. But Imanaga, we talked about this so many times a couple of years ago before the draft season started, that I thought Imanaga was the better return on investment, and he was last year. And then last year when Yamamoto's draft stock came down a little bit, I said, okay, now it's time to buy on Yamamoto because Yamamoto is going to be the better pitcher. But I don't know if there's anybody in the rankings last year that was lower on Sasaki than I was. I saw a lot of things in the tape that I didn't like about Sasaki.
I was, but yeah.
Well, I don't know. I have to battle that. I think we got to go back.
Oh yeah, I hated. I went on shows hating on Sasaki. Yeah,
I thought he was going to be much more of a work in progress, and he should have ended up in the minor leagues to start the year, but they didn't want to do it because obviously what they're paying him.
What I think is interesting when you just you can't completely compare Emmet and Ponce, but when you look at values, let's also look at the contract for Emmet. Emmet had a contract that has incentives to get to 80 innings, 90 innings. That's a weird incentive of trust that. If Emet's reverse slider and the fastball and if it does work and you don't see a major degradation from, from a stateside ball to where he was and he's awesome, maybe this isn't a question, but if he has some struggles and they don't trust him to eat a bunch of innings, Cody Ponce might be a player that just straight up 1-for-1 overvalues him if he ends up having a 28% K percentage and picks up 13, 14 wins and has a sub 4 ERA. Ponce outside the top 400 might just straight up be more valuable than Emmet. And the only reason I bring those two up is because you put them both in the in the book as the question marks or whatever. That Ponce, I think, has more value based on how far back he is, where there's some big questions with Emmet.
Well, and Ponce has already, played in the major leagues, been through that world and that universe too. It's, there's no language barrier. There's so many idiosyncrasies that come into these guys in their adjustment period. Ponce to me is if I was trying to comp him to what I want him to be in the when he's all grown up in the major leagues, what I want him to be, I want him to be Lance Lynn. That's what I want to be. A big here it is, come get it kind of pitcher. And I think he could be that. Joe Orrico, you're the Blue Jays guy. What was your reaction to the Ponce signing?
I think it's fine when these guys come over from Korea.
That's not exciting, Joe Orrico. That was like mild sauce at Taco Bell, baby. That's nothing you gave us just now. It's okay.
Joe's tired because he spent all of his time fighting everybody that didn't like Dylan Cease signing. He wasted all of his energy on defending
I like the Dylan Cease signing. A guy who makes 30 starts every year. What a concept. Let's invest in that guy. Go ahead, Joe.
When Dylan Cease is raising the American League Cy Young Award this year, we'll revisit
I don't know about that. Let's not get that crazy.
But I'm getting cheeky here. But Cody Ponce, the thing with Cody Ponce is that he was in Japan in 2022, 2023, 2024. Japan is considered a closer equivalent to about AAA, and Korea usually is considered closer to AA. He was pretty bad in Japan, and especially in 2024. No strikeouts, 6.72 ERA, getting blown up, a 161 whip. He goes to Korea, goes down a level, and absolutely dominates. And we have seen some success stories of guys coming over in year one and from Korea and doing really well. Eric Fetty a couple of years ago was fantastic. Miles Michaelis in his first couple of years was really good before he became a bit of a punchline. Merle Kelly has been good pretty much every year since he's come over. So there are success stories.
That was the comp I was thinking, yeah.
There are definitely success stories from Korea. I think we can expect, honestly, the projections seem pretty accurate to me. About a 4 ERA, maybe a 1.23 whip with some decent strikeouts. I think he can carry that over a little bit. But we got to remember, he was piss poor in Japan. 18% strikeout rate, getting blown up. I don't think that he is going to be an ace or anything close to it in the majors, but he can be a serviceable number 4. And to Welsh's point, where he's getting drafted, there's nothing but value there. So I'm interested from a fantasy point of view. From the Jays perspective, I think he's a solid number 5 starter. It muddies the waters with Jose Barrios and what they do there now, but it's a good problem to have. You got more pitching depth, and he's a guy who I think can throw 30 starts because that's who the Blue Jays target. They don't go after guys who are going to make 16 starts. Every guy in that rotation can pitch 32 times, and I think Ponce is similarly gifted in that sense.
All right. Very good. Very good. All right. So some good voice of reasoning there from Joe Orrico. I like that. Let's get
Very
to
rare.
It is rare, but I like it. Look, it's a new year. It's a new you, Orrico. Let's talk about it. Next guy up for me in my final pick here before we get to the guy we all agreed on. 94th pitcher on the rankings on FantasyPros. 304. Also quite free right now on the NFBC scale is Logan Henderson. And you'll say, well, Logan Henderson doesn't necessarily have a spot right now. Well, maybe we get a Freddie Peralta trade and that changes things. Maybe we get a Jacob Mizorowski injury, as I'm predicting all year. At some point, we're going to get that Tommy John. It's coming. It's coming. I know everybody hates me already, but that's okay. I'm the heel here on the channel. That's all right. I'll take all the heat. But I'll say this. I think he's a more complete pitcher at this stage in his development than Mizorowski is. I think he's a better return on investment than Mizorowski is. And maybe this is a hot take for some people. It's not trying to knock Jacob Mizorowski. His velocity is dazzling. It's very exciting. It's sexy. It's cool. It's all the things that TLC wanted to be in the mid to late 90s. But I will say this about Jacob Mizorowski. I still am concerned with the physical body type, the repetition of his mechanics. I'm still worried that the walk rate still gets away from him a little bit. Go back to Logan Henderson. What I love about him is that in the minor leagues, over a good sample size right now, there's 60 games in the minor leagues, 250 innings. That walk rate, 2.5 walks per 9. The K rate, 11.5. Last year at AAA, it was 10.1. He was fantastic. He was 10-4 last year in 15 minor league starts. He had a 3.59 ERA. He came up, made a handful of starts for the Brewers, and he was awesome. He was undefeated awesome. Made 5 starts. He was 3-0 with a 1.78 ERA. Now, look, that's not going to hold. He had a sub-1 whip. And even in the minor leagues over those starts that he made over 77 innings, he had a 1.10 whip. So last year, through just under 100 innings, I think Logan Henderson ends up becoming a guy that you see this year making an impact in that rotation for the Brewers. And we all know the Brewers are going to be a hyper-competitive team. That's who they are. They have a great manager. They have a really good infrastructure. I think Logan Henderson is another one of these guys that's going to come in and make a huge impact. You saw what some of these guys like Patrick and Quinn Priest are all impacted last year, right? They're so good at getting contributions from within and picking guys up off the waiver wire and making acquisitions, right? I think they've got a gem here sitting and just waiting to blossom, and I think Logan Henderson's going to be that guy. So I want him for free, and I want to put him on my roster because I do believe at some point he makes 15 to 20 starts with the big club, and I think they're going to be impactful, and I think there's upside for even more of that. Now, we tried to get our 10th guy, and we had 2 guys that we were debating between, going back and forth of who we were going to agree on, and we ended up landing on Ryan Pepio. Now, Ryan Pepio, last year, solid season. Now, he did get into some problems there later in the season. If you go and look at the game log, obviously the second half of the year, a 4.89 ERA after a 3.38 ERA to start the year. So the last 11 starts, maybe you could say it's fatigue. July, he had a 5 ERA. Then things bounced back over 5 August starts with a 3.25 ERA. But then in September, not too great either. That ERA went to 6.52 over those 3 starts. But we love what Pepio brings. He has good control. He has good strikeout potential. Once again, Joe Orrico, a guy moving back to Tampa into that pitcher-friendly environment. I think this is one of the best reasons to buy back in on Ryan Pepio, even though there were some moments of, I think, peaks and valleys in 2025.
Yeah, I would have hoped for a few more strikeouts. I would have hoped for, the walk rate to be a little bit better. But at the end of the day, he gave you a 3.86 ERA, 1.16 whip over almost 170 innings. And what we've seen from him at every place he's been in the majors, whether it's been as a starter, as a reliever, Los Angeles, Tampa, he's always had success. We're at almost 400 innings, about 3.54 ERA, 1.14 whip. I just drafted him actually this morning. I'm in a slow draft. I took him at pick 144 as my SP3, and I feel really, really good about it. Going back to the Trop, should be something that I think it just helps their entire staff this year. And he was somebody, interestingly, it didn't really affect him so much last year. 3.41 home ERA, 4.38 on the road, but I don't think anybody's going to complain about going back to a pitcher-friendly park, especially for a guy with a 1.4 homer 9 last year. So I'm all in on Pepio. And actually, when we did our show in Arizona and we brought on different people around the industry to highlight their favorite targets, he was Paul Spore's favorite pitching target. So a lot of people are interested in Pepio. I imagine the price will continue to trend up a little bit.
All right. Your thoughts, Welsh, on Ryan Pepio, since it's the guy that we all seem to like and we think not only has a solid floor, but there's still a little bit of room for him to grow and even mature too into a better environment, making half of his starts back in the old ballpark in Tampa.
Yeah, I think that's a big portion of it. He struggled a bit against righties because he was throwing his slider a bit more, and his slider is getting hit a little bit more this year. But I think a big portion of it is, you're like, hey, look at the second half, things get bad, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, summer months. You get summer months in a minor league ballpark. That's not fantastic. Same thing the A's are dealing with. The ball's going to start flying. That, he had a full run differential between his home and road ERA. I think he's got a really good arsenal of stuff. I'd like to see maybe the cutter uptick a little bit more. He threw it about 1% more from 5.8 to 6.9 this past year. Maybe if he throws that a little bit more, that can end up making that slider a little bit more effective because, he essentially becomes I don't want to call him like a 2-pitch pitcher versus like lefties or anything like that. But, it's like 10% on the slider, 10% on the cutter. I'd love to see the mix change a little bit, but I love his stuff. I think he can go deep into games. He's been kind of the forefront of a trade talk. I mean, if Ketel Marte were to go to the Rays, it was going to be for Ryan Pepio. So a lot of teams see him as like a frontline starter. I don't think this is one that like he's going to be a top 15 starting pitcher in fantasy or anything like that. But in the 150s, he's absolutely a good value. I can 100% see him jumping up and tallying 185 innings this year, 14 wins, and, probably pushing like a 9K per 9, a little bit more. So I like Pepio. I'd love for him to cut the walks down a little bit, and I think he can be even better, but he's definitely has some high upside.
I think to get a guy around the 50th SP overall that you want to just leave in your rotation in fantasy every week is pretty good value. I think that's what Pepio brings you, where you're constantly moving guys in and out and playing matchups at the back end, around that age of the 50th pitcher overall. Pepio is a pretty solid leave it, set it, forget it kind of guy. Now, the guy that's got more potential that all three of us really like, but we've been debating on whether or not that was the right guy. So those are the top 10 in terms of the undervalued that we were like, okay, there's your 3, my 3, his 3, and then we got the one bonus guy. But you know what? We're overachievers. We're going to give you another bonus guy. It's Emmet Sheehan of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Emmet Sheehan, a couple years ago, was leading the minor leagues in strikeouts. Then he had Tommy John. And then last year came back, and he was brilliant for the Dodgers when he was getting his opportunities. And, of course, the Dodgers rotation, because of Tyler Glasnow and Roki Sasaki and some other issues and injuries, got plenty of opportunities. And Emmet Sheehan ended up throwing 73 innings for the big club. We all know how good the Dodgers are. He was 6-3 over that. He made 12 starts, 15 appearances overall. He had a K per 9 almost at 11. The 2.7 walk per 9, right on that borderline, just keep it under the 3 there, young man, and things will be good. But he was dominant. All the xERA, the FIP numbers, everything was brilliant. It's just whether or not he gets another crack at this rotation. Does injury have to open that up for him? I still love Sheehan. I'm where Welsh is. My concern is even at 136 overall in the ADP, it's baking in like he is basically got to start almost, I don't want to say day one, but like Tyler Glasnow, we know, is never going to make 30 starts. They're paying Roki Sasaki a lot of money. Everything that I've read, everything I've heard is that they want to give him another crack at this rotation. So, Welsh, why are you so confident that Sheehan is going to be a big contributor this year? And give me a number of starts you think he's going to make for the big club.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, and the big portion, the funny circling of Emmet Sheehan was Joe Orrico had him, and I was like, oh, I would have put him on my list if you didn't, Orrico. And then he's like, all right, well, maybe you can have him. And then I said, well, maybe let's put him as the top 10. And then Pisapia came in from the top rope and was like, nay, I don't really buy it because I don't buy the innings. So that's why he's in the non-disagree. I think I'm the highest of any of you guys, even though Joe put him on there. I would have put him on here, but he was willing to give him up.
I buy it.
Well, but you don't love him because you don't think he's going to start.
It's look, as long as the ADP stays where it is, I'm in. But if it starts to rise because people are speculating, like I said, I just think that the Dodgers are going to, if the Dodgers give Roki 2 months in the rotation and Glasnow was healthy for the first 2 months, where's that leave Sheehan? That's my question. And that's a scenario that could play out.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it absolutely could. Like any of that could play out. But right now, Emmet Sheehan has got the rotation spot. Roki was a reliever on the back half of last year. They got to spend this offseason figuring out how they can make him a starter. Now, how can they make it work? They love to throw out 6-man rotations. That's their favorite thing to do. That eats into Emmet Sheehan a little bit. I don't see a scenario where you're going to stifle a guy like Emmet Sheehan right now. He had a 2.82 ERA this past year. I mean, as you were saying, I mean, looking here, it was 5 of his last 6 starts. The guy gave up a total. Actually, let me just do this. In his last 6 starts, he gave up a total of 4 earned runs over those 6. The last start wasn't really a start. It was like 1 inning. But if you want to take the other one in there, 5 starts of 4 total earned runs given up. He was striking guys out. He had a 30% K percentage this past year, 7.6 walk. I mean, you're looking at a 23 K minus walk percentage. That's a number. It's a valuable number to look at. And a lot of people are, if you want to be like, oh, ERA stinks or K percentage. All right, do K minus walk percentage. That's an elite 23% number. Expected ERA was at 3. His stuff looked phenomenal. Now, I see no reason, money-wise or not, experimentally, to take Emmet Sheehan out of the rotation. Now, there's been rumors about maybe he would be at the forefront of some type of a trade. I think right now the rotation is Ohtani, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Snell, and Sheehan. And I think that's the end of the story. If they want to go 6-man rotation, it's because Sasaki is added to it. I just don't see Sheehan coming out of this. But the nice thing and why there's a value is I think some of this is baked in. I think the only way Sheehan moves up in value is if the Dodgers say what I'm saying, that he is locked in, he's a starter, nothing's going to change that. But we're still also implementing, if it's a 6-man rotation, that does take starts off and cuts a tiny bit into the value. I think Sheehan has a ton of upside. Dodgers win, run support. And I think I'm very confident that he's going to stay in the rotations. That's why I love him. I want to draft. He's one of my must draft players this year. And I'm not going to talk myself out because of Roki Sasaki.
I don't want to either. I just wanted to stay cost effective. Right now, I think it is. It's just whether or not the Dodgers want to recoup more of their investment in Roki and Glasnow to a certain degree as well. I agree with you in principle, just for the record. Sheehan should be in the rotation. He deserves it. He pitched good enough to be there, and Roki didn't show you anything last year. Joe Orrico, I want to get your take on this. So where are you at with Emmet Sheehan? Because I know there's another one you're high on as well. All 3 of us like him. It's just whether or not we want to recommend him going into the year at the ADP. That's the big question.
So the first thing, let me start with Roki, because I don't think the money really matters. First of all, the Dodgers don't really care about money. But with Roki, I don't think he got like a massive, like it was like kind of like a rookie scale contract, if I'm remembering correctly, with arbitration years. And it's not like he's making $20 or $30 million, unless I'm mistaken there. But I think he's making something like $4 or $5 million. So I don't know that the money aspect is going to factor into it so much. I think the Dodgers, if anything, what could factor into it is just they don't care about the regular season. And a lot of these guys, the Yamamotos, the Snells, the Glasnows, the Ohtanis, will be slow played to some extent. Yamamoto's going to the WBC. After a 175 inning season where he was throwing complete games every other day in the playoffs, there's going to be some wear and tear there. We know Blake Snell. Blake Snell's been the guy for his whole career who cannot get to 180 innings. Tyler Glasnow, you can write him in for 110 right now. And Ohtani, I don't think they're going to let Ohtani go 180 or anything even close to it. So with every guy in the rotation, there are some question marks about their health, not really about their talent, but about how often they're going to be on the field and how often the Dodgers are going to let them take the field when it doesn't really matter. They're going to make the playoffs. They only care about October anyway. With a guy like Emmet Sheehan, the talent is so through the roof at 25 years old. Every number for everybody who looks at this stuff like we do is off the charts. All of the ERA estimators are great. The strikeout rate is good. He doesn't walk too many guys. Stuff, darling. Everything clicks. And even if he doesn't make all those starts in April and May, maybe they do start the season with their regular rotation, there will be times throughout the year, a lot of times I think, where Emmet Sheehan is going to be relied upon. And I think we're looking at 25 starts as kind of a minimum here. And in those starts, if he's giving you anything close to what we saw last year, it could be pretty special. But I'm just curious, Joe, if you found anything about the Roki deal, because I don't think he's making that much money.
So he had a signing bonus of almost $7 million. You're right in terms of his like annual right now. It's a lower scale. But the possibility with the extension, it could end up being a $200 million contract if he hits all the incentives and things. So we were both right. There's a lot of theoretical investment and monetary investment into Zaki getting right, and we'll see if he does. The one thing is for certain, we all like Emmet Sheehan. So give us your take too on the YouTube channel. Are you in on Emmet Sheehan at this current ADP? Do you need it to fall back a little bit? Or if it goes higher, are you out on Sheehan? 25 starts, that'd be amazing. I'd love any pitcher to make 25 starts. Joe Orrico as a base. Are you kidding me? Where can I sign up for that?
The bat has him at 18, by the way. They have 40 games pitched, 18 starts. I think that's underplaying it, but I understand some of the hesitations for it. 120 innings is where the bat's currently putting Emmet Sheehan at. So,
all right, make sure you head over to FantasyPros.com. Check out all the baseball rankings over there. The consensus ADP is going to live there as well. Plus, again, all the incredible tools. Sync your leagues for free. And while you're at it, getting ready for baseball season, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and go get your Fantasy Baseball Black Book 2026 with these two yokels helping me out, get you prepared for the fantasy baseball season. You're not going to find a better piece for redraft or for dynasty leagues out there on the market. Go get it on Amazon today. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Joe Orrico and the Welsh, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.